The legislature is back in session. Colleagues, where we left off is on, let me have that amendment, the other one. We are on amendment TMT L20 P7-12, Roman numeral III. OFB has reviewed this amendment. The revenue calculations to raise the revenue have not been completed properly in terms of the way that it adjusts the revenue. However, I will entertain the amendment and dispose of it. So Senator Chala'i has already introduced the amendment, and so now we'll go to any other members. Would you like to speak on the amendment? On the Chala'i amendment to raise revenues by $7 million.
The withholding, right? The withholding?
Withholding, correct. Hearing none, Senator Chala'i, you may close.
Mr. Chair and colleagues, and again, so the exact number that this is proposing to raise the withholding taxes that we are expecting to receive is $7,014,994. This comes from the governor's executive budget request number. And as we had our discussion in here with the panel from all the different fiscal team members, they were very confident that this amount is a very still conservative and reasonable estimate of what we will receive in withholding. And they base that on what we are receiving today in withholding and potential changes upcoming. So this harms no one to increase this withholding amount, and it really just makes $7 million plus available for expenditure, or it just leaves it there as a cushion for other parts. It just leaves it there as expected revenue if we determine as a legislature not to spend it. This whole chapter that we're working on right now is just to determine how much revenue we're going to bring in, to predict it, to guess it, and what we will have left if we have that revenue after we spend on bonds and spend on tax refunds, or set aside for tax refunds and set aside for tax credits. And this whole chapter is just to give us what number might we have left to spend on government operations. So again, this amendment, if you see it on the withholding line, is just to increase that expected amount for withholding taxes. This is the taxes that are withheld from people who are working and remitted to the government. So we expect $7 million more. I appreciate all of your support for this. Again, there's no harm to any agency. There's no harm to the rest of the budget. It actually just gives us a little cushion by increasing the amount of revenue. Senator
Chala'i. On the amendment, are there any objections? There has been an objection. So on the amendment, all in favor, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. Senators, I am going to make a ruling on the next two amendments, and I will explain it. If there's any further explanation needed by OFB, I will entertain that. But first of all, on the next amendment, TMT amendment, Senator Chala'i, this is TMT L15-16 P8. Senators, if you look at this amendment and you look at another amendment proffered earlier that failed, TMT L10 P1-7, this amendment uses the same table that was put forward that was part of the failed amendment that already failed earlier. It is the same sections and same verbiage, and also different numbers, but the same section. And also OFB's calculation says they cannot verify the chart that's been put out, and they also cannot verify the amounts that are adjusted or the proper elimination of the BPT under this particular amendment. Like I said, it's materially the same with some different amounts as the earlier amendment that failed. So at this time, I'm going to rule this
Mr.
amendment
Chair,
as per our rules out of order.
Mr. Chair, this amendment cannot be materially the same. It's completely different. It's to allow businesses under $1 million to get 3% in gross receipts tax versus the earlier amendment with businesses under $2 million.
Thank you, Senator, for the information. I have ruled it out of order. Are you moving to overrule the chair?
Obviously, we're not going to get the votes. We don't even have a full body in here.
We have a quorum. Senator,
Mr. Chair,
are you moving to overrule the chair?
I'm just asking you to be
Senator,
reasonable
we are going to
in
go
your
by the
rulings,
rules.
Mr. Chair,
Okay,
because
we have our
even
rules.
the
Are you
words
making a
are
motion to
completely
overrule the
different.
chair? Senator, are you making, otherwise, I will have to move to another action if you're disrupting order.
I'm not disrupting order. I'm
You are,
asking the
because
chair.
you have
All right,
an
I'm going to make a
obligation
motion.
to
My
motion to overrule the chair.
My motion is to overrule the chair for not acting reasonable in recognizing that the words 2 million are materially different than $1 million.
That's sufficient. There is a motion to overrule the chair. All in favor of overruling the chair, please raise your hand. Motion fails. The next amendment I will read out. No, it's this one. That's Joe's. The next amendment that I will read out is got the same situation. It's just a different dollar amount referencing the same chart that was issued on the other amendment that I had read previously. This is TMT L10 P1-7 numeral II. Once again, it's the same issues. It recognizes a different threshold amount, but it references the same chart and the same adjustment to revenues and the chart that cannot be verified by OFB. So at this time, I rule this amendment out of order.
Again, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to overrule the chair because this amendment, by its words, are very different than the earlier amendment that included putting the additional revenues to Simon Sanchez. This amendment brings us additional revenues for the government, but does not even indicate where it's going to go. That's a material difference.
Thank you. Thank you. You've stated
significant,
it very
Mr.
well.
Chair, and I think
well.
it's very unreasonable to, when the words are different, to rule them the same.
You have stated that well, Madam Senator Terlahi. There has been a motion to overrule the chair and on his reasoning of OFB's inability to verify the chart or references. All in favor of overruling the chair, please raise your hand.
I think if you read the amendment, you'll see that it is materially different.
Thank you, Senator.
So I'd ask that you just read out the amendment, sir.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator,
Chair.
for your point of opinion. At this time, there has been a motion to overrule the chair. All those in favor of overruling the chair, please raise your hand. Motion fails. We are moving to the next amendment, and currently the author is not in the House. So I'm going to take a 5-minute recess.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Are we allowing FY25 unaudited excess revenues to be spent in this budget? Because if that's a new rule, then we will definitely be able to do that.
We will debate that when the motion is moved, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are in recess. Legislature is back in session. Senators, refer to this next amendment as per how it was introduced to the drive. Timestamp. This is JSSA L16P7, introduced by, once again, Senator Joseph Augustine. Senator, please read the amendment to the record, and you may proceed to speak on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment, as you identified earlier, is SB 44 JSSA L16P7. It's for line 16, page 7, to add a new K to section 2 of chapter 1 of the bill to read. K, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, $16,377,125 is hereby appropriated from the net projected unobligated fiscal year 2025 general fund revenue balance as identified in the June 2025 consolidated revenue and expenditure report for Simon Sanchez High School construction lease back payments. Mr. Chair, I'm proffering this amendment, and I understand, Mr. Chairman, that you have held a firm hold on any appropriation made from the unappropriated general fund balance. This has assisted in ensuring the fund balance is currently now at 30.9 million as of June, CRER. Mr. Chairman, I, on behalf of the stakeholders of Simon Sanchez and the community of Jigu, request your support and the support of my colleagues to vote affirmatively on this amendment to appropriate 16.377 and 125 from this unobligated 2025 fiscal year general fund. This appropriation will not affect any revenues, appropriations, or allocations contained in this bill. With this amendment, as we all committed in supporting and advocating for the education of our island students and families, together we can make the rebuild of Simon Sanchez High School finally a reality for thousands of students it will serve. And it's like it was mentioned throughout the past few days, instead of just building a shell, but truly build the quality facilities that the students of Jigu, of Simon Sanchez High School, deserve. And I humbly ask for all your support. Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Sidus Masi, Senator Joseph Augustine. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Chalahi, you recognize.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, and I'm so glad that you didn't rule this amendment out of order, even though you made a rule earlier that we couldn't use FY24 excess revenues. So this use of FY25 revenues, I completely support, and it makes perfect sense that if we are tracking more than what we predicted last year that we would bring in, that it be used, and that it be used today when it's needed for Simon Sanchez, tax refunds, GMH, public health, for any of those needs for EPA. So I completely support that Simon Sanchez, if Gita says we need it for them, then let's move it. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to use excess revenues, because that is really going to be the key of how we're going to take care of all the shortfalls that have been brought to our attention, that we're not taking care of in the budget that we have in front of us, that we're not taking care of even governor's budget, some of these things. So I'm very glad that the legislature has an opportunity to take care of this. And if we get to use FY25 unaudited, unobligated revenues, I'm all for it. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi, Senator Chalahi. On the amendment, anyone on the amendment? Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
You forgot about me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the profferer of this amendment for introducing it. I support this amendment. I think if we have unobligated fiscal year 2025 general revenue balance, that we should use it on Simon Sanchez if it's available. At some point, we have to put our money where our priorities are, And if that's going to be on the school, let's cut the check and let's get the ball moving on Simon Sanchez. It's been a very long process to start, but I remember what it was like as a kid growing up when my own school was destroyed in a typhoon. I was a student at, was now Jose Rios Middle School. Back then it was PD Middle School in the 6th grade. Typhoon Paca came and demolished that place. And I remember my 2nd semester of 8th grade, before I even got out of middle school, we were back at that PD Middle School location after a short stint of double session with Agada. And so, you know, once upon a time, this government used to move with some urgency when it came to prioritizing the school rebuilds and that process. And somewhere along the way, it's slowed down fatally in terms of getting good work done in a reasonable amount of time. Because I believe the students of Simon Sanchez have been very reasonable in how long they waited for relief in terms of getting that school started and built. And this $16.3 million is definitely a step in the right direction in terms of what we got to do for our kids. I don't want to be in a situation where my own toddler daughter starts to get into high school and she might be going to Sanchez and we find out it's not rebuilt even then. And it's not just Sanchez that needs to be rebuilt. There are schools down the line that are coming up. I went to George Washington. From what I understand, my alma mater is looking for a rebuild in the near future. And so we have to start clearing these projects. We need to start dedicating the funding as necessary. And so I thank the good author for introducing this amendment, and I support it. And I ask my colleagues to please support it. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Sidus Masi, earlier Ranking Member Tina Muñoz Barnes raised her hand, so please proceed on the amendment. Senator Barnes.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, I know sometimes you can't see me, I'm on the corner back here, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this amendment and rise in support of this amendment from the good senator from Jigo in supporting the provision of $16,377,125 from the net projected unobligated fiscal year 2025 general fund revenue balance. I would be remiss, Mr. Chair, if I didn't share with our colleagues today that one of our former colleagues, the good senator from Jigo, Barragata, also our youngest senator at the time last term was Senator Roy, who literally shared that he graduated in 2014 from Simon Sanchez, and they didn't have a house, and that he had been on the forefront advocating for this effort. And I know that even last term, he continuously up there in front of this issue, making sure that we finally get to build and or even start construction on this. And I know, Mr. Chair, it hasn't been an easy journey. It has been really difficult. When you have to go through procurement, when you have to go through change orders, when you have to go through just a lot of bureaucratic red tape, so I'll call it, we sometimes forget where the real priorities are, and I just want to say that the priorities are our students. We have to realize that they need a home. And the good senator, then Senator Roy, said, you know, I will not stop defending and advocating for this. And I feel and share the same sentiments as the Vice Chair of Education, working closely with good Chair, Senator Borja. I think that we have to make sure that we know that Simon Sanchez is a priority, and everybody kind of realizes that, if not realizes that, and we need to make sure that this funding source is there for them. So I stand and rise in full support of this amendment and thank the good senator from Jigo, Senator Joe San Agustin, for literally taking the time and pushing this forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Citos Masi, Ranking Member Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes. On the amendment, Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
So just want to see, Mr. Chair, and buenas, bidding enes to the people of Guam watching on our YouTube stream and also on Docomo and GTA. Good afternoon and welcome to this session. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak in support of this amendment, as I'm pretty sure everyone who's paying attention has watched very closely how much this situation with funding the Simon Sanchez debt service has changed from the beginning of this session, where we had colleagues in here saying that it wasn't necessary to appropriate this money so that the construction of the new home of the Sharks can move forward. And then after testimony provided by the panel, I'm very grateful that we had some changing of the tune in here, and now we have an actual amendment. I know there are several amendments in the drive that we're trying to address funding this $16.3 million, and I had a couple, and we were all just trying to figure out which funding source was going to be recognized and approved by the chair of the committee. So I too just want to echo that I'm grateful that appears that we're going to be able to use this unobligated fiscal year 25 general fund revenues to cover a lot of the shortfalls that are being created by this $40 million tax discount to the richest of the rich corporations. And my dear people of Guam, that's really why we're scrambling to meet all these obligations, like making sure that we have enough money to pay for your tax refunds, funding the new Simon Sanchez. Of course, we're trying to address the rainy day fund, among other things, but most importantly, to include a lot of the agencies which have status quo or less than status quo budgets. And, you know, while we're on the subject of education, I know that some in here have expressed that they're good with the $266 million that the Guam Department of Education is receiving in this budget. But I think a lot of the leadership at GDOE would disagree with that, as I'm understanding that they were told they were going to get a budget of $275 million and to prepare for cuts to the tune of $275, when in actuality, their budget in the bill is $266 million. And so now, because we've chosen to prioritize a $40 million tax cut for the richest of the rich corporations, the Guam Department of Education is proposing cuts to critical programs and services that directly benefit our public school students, to include considerations cutting new positions in the collective bargaining agreement, to include 90 school aides, clerks, school counselors. They're also proposing to cut non-CBA vacancies, including JROTC instructors, assistant principals. And because of this shortchanging of our public school system, they're also anticipating cutting on-call substitute teachers. And because they're being shortchanged, they're now saying that they're going to have to make cuts and they're only going to be able to fund 2 substitute teachers per school. Mr. Chair, the list goes on and on. They're also proposing cuts to interscholastic sports. So again, this shortchanging of our public school students will directly negatively impact students and programs. Other things that GDOE is proposing to cut because we're shortchanging them: $600,000 in maintenance costs for non-ARP funded aircons throughout the district. The impact of that, my dear people of Guam, AC maintenance contract for non-warranted older AC units in the schools will be exhausted before the school year ends. They're also anticipating cutting training costs and continuing education for critical staff. They're considering cutting, and I use the word considering. I don't want to use it because they're basically saying that they have to make these cuts if they get $266 million, to include cutting the funds that are set aside for principals to provide direct self-help maintenance at the schools. They're also proposing that they're going to cut the Public Library Resource Fund, Interscholastic Sports Supplemental Fund by some $200,000, which means the Interscholastic Sports Association will not have funding for supplies and equipment, Mr. Chair. And then they're also proposing reducing their expected utility costs by 50%, even though we all know that is pretty much impossible since they've only closed a couple of schools. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to rise in support of this amendment and to further demonstrate to the public the cost of this tax discount relative to the impact to critical public services, specifically with the Guam Department of Education and our public school system, Mr. Chairman. Si Jus Masi.
Jus Masi, Senator, and I'm sure we're going to look forward to, once this budget passes, to bring them in, and we'll verify all of those items that you've enumerated. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? On the amendment? On the amendment. Mr. Speaker, can you take the chair?
On the amendment, Senator Duane, you recognized.
Si Jus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly rise to support the amendment and want to clarify a previous position that I've held and discuss this amendment. Mr. Speaker, I thank the author for recognizing that we have been very strict in this fiscal year as we assume leadership to ensure that excess revenues to be appropriated must be accompanied by either an emergency call by yourself or the governor or any other serious, compelling reason to use the appropriations capability. Mr. Speaker, this also keeps in line with our dedication within our caucus to understand that the 50% rule of what's tracking in terms of excess revenue is exercised to even continue to be to continue the fiscal responsibility of that, and this is within that 50% threshold. Mr. Speaker, you know, there's a continuing refrain on the floor that this appropriation is necessary for Simon Sanchez to move forward. There's a tad bit of truth to that, but I want to make sure I clarify that once again. Mr. Speaker, yourself, myself, and other colleagues on our side of the aisle clearly demonstrated through our questions to Lester Carlson, Ed Byrne, and others that the current law that allows Simon Sanchez to be constructed has all of the authorization to go to market. What had happened, Mr. Speaker, is because it took so long for this RFP to be put out. Now, we are 2 years and 2 months right now after when the public law actually passed. And that process of the time that has elapsed has caused a lot of cost increases. One is the issue of the interest rates. The other is inflation. And the other is really just the need, because of the current conditions, to have more revenue towards making sure that they can continue to get what they need to take care of capitalized interest and the like, so that they can secure and continue to work within the law that was passed of the debt service, as well as the $166 million for the school that was promised, but the school that took another 2 years and 2 months to get to the promised land of even going to market. We're not even talking about construction, Mr. Speaker. Construction beginning realistically, even as Mr. Carlson said, if they have all of the offerings in October, by getting to market and everything else, it's probably going to be well into the new year before ground is even broken. So the need for this was demonstrated because we are now in a situation where we need to cover that. But it is not to go to market. They have the public law to go to market. The problem with going to market without an identified appropriation is that it will impede all of the other FF&E that was promised, all of the issue with capitalized interest, all of the things that could have happened had it happened earlier. But we're not there anymore. So this is critical at this point to realize the campus for the sharks that we promised. And so I thank my colleagues, and I hope that this amendment can pass, even with the strict restrictions that we had put on excess revenues, because we had already allowed for and assigned excess revenues from the governor, but I guess there's just no appetite for that within the amendment that currently exists in the miscellaneous provisions. So with all of this back and forth on the floor, I do thank the author for moving the amendment and now realizing that because of all the conditions that were created by the lateness of the RFP, by all of those conditions, and I'm not picking on anybody again. It seems like it could have been forecast to be in the EBR, but it wasn't. But here we are. We have a solution. But I just wanted to be clear that all of us, have been diligently trying to work on this, and this is the right thing to do. So therefore, I support the amendment and hope for its passage. Thank you. And Jesús Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of information?
Yeah, it's an article in August 4th, 2025 in the Pacific Daily News. It says, hands off 56 million excess. Dueñas said he will not support lawmakers tapping into the roughly 56.6 million worth of taxes and fees that the government of Guam collected over projected levels through fiscal year 2025. A balance of about 30.9 million from the fund is left over after accounting for shortfalls and appropriations that have to be funded. I think it was stated otherwise, so those are the facts.
Thank you for the point.
Point of clarification, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely. That was my statement, and that was absolutely the intent. However, on this floor, we get surprise, surprise, surprise a lot of times. So thank you for that, and thank you for allowing me to clarify why I have allowed for hands-on, all hands on deck. Jesús Masi.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, on the Sanogosan amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Perez, ma'am, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in full support of this amendment, hoping that this money is available because the Sharks have waited this long. As a former teacher, Simon Sanchez, I know the agony that the community has suffered all these years. And if we could just get through the finish line, I think we're almost there. And we need to bring hope to our community as well as the the ability to make it happen. So hopefully we'll see groundbreaking real soon. Jesús Masi.
Jesús Masi, Senator Perez. On the amendment, Senator Tadek, will you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I stand in full support of this amendment. I think, it's long overdue, and everybody has expressed that situation we have with Simon Sanchez. I remember even when I was getting out of the 30th Guam Legislature and then coming back into the 35th, it was still an issue. And it's been long overdue. I just hope, to goodness sakes, that when it's time to renovate GW, that it's not going to take this long. So it's important that we think ahead of what's going to happen in the future and be prepared for it. Because if we are preparing now for something's bound to happen in the future, then they wouldn't be having to wait so long. So we need to set things aside. And I saw the funding source on 2025, and I'm hoping my colleagues realize that when we come into a situation where there's dire need, and that rainy day fund is going to look awfully good for us to cover some shortfalls anywhere that's considered an emergency. And I think our children on Guam is a grounds for emergency for their needs. And the rainy day fund, I'm hoping we can take from FY24 excess revenue. So I'm glad the author of the legislation made it to FY25, fiscal year FY25, so that there's still an avenue to have that protection of the rainy day fund in the fiscal year of FY24. So that being said, Mr. Chair, I stand in support of this legislation and Biba Sharks.
Jesús Masi, Senator Tadek. On the amendment, anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Calvo, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Half a day in Buenas, and hello to the people of Guam. Finally, a light in the end of the tunnel, and I hope that it's not just a little light, and I hope that we really push forward with this. And I commend and thank the good senator from Jigo for coming up with this amendment, and I fully support it. I stand in full support of this amendment, and I hope that everybody here in the chamber will support it as well. I've been hearing so much about Simon Sanchez and how we need to solve this problem for years. Even just in the last couple of days, it's almost like it's a byline already. And I hope that we fully finish this already, because this should not just be a conversation piece, but we should act upon it. And not just a piece that we should use every time there's election. So I commend the good senator from Jigo. Thank you, sir. And I fully support this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair.
Jesus Masi, Senator Calvo. On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Okay, Senator Snogstein, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have an amendment to the amendment, and it's a real simple one. Is that because, unfortunately, when we first wrote the amendment, we identified the line 16, page 7, verses, and that's under the BBT related. And I just want to place it in a correct section, which would be on page, it would be a new section 9 to chapter 1, page 16, line 11. So in other words, so it'll stand alone and it's not related to anything else in chapter 1. It stands alone. And that was identified by the finance folks behind. Sir.
On the amendment, do we need that in writing to discuss the amendment to the amendment? Anyone? Any objections to the amendment? And make technical and legal corrections, correct?
Sir.
Amendment passes. On the amendment, as amended, you may continue to close, Senator Snogstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure, I'm just happy that with the support of my colleagues, we can literally say loudly, Biba Sharks, and we can bring them home. That's all I've been after for. And my son happened to be alumni of Simon Sanchez 20 years ago. And since then, I've been fighting for the Sharks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, my colleagues, for your support.
Jesus Masi, Senator San Agustin. On the amendment, are there any objections to the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, amendment passes. The next amendment, as received in the drive, time-stamped, is by Senator William Parkinson. It is WAP L1P2. At this time, Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chair. I would like to take a moment's recess because I have a substitute version of this amendment that I would like to pass out.
We are in recess. Legislators is back in session. Folks, I'm going to identify now the new amendment that's being passed out to you, and I'm going to give you the reason for the slight latitude I gave the author other than proffering an amendment on the floor. He'll explain it in his opening. But this is WAPL1P2S. And Senator Parkinson, you're recognized to the minor latitude I gave you because it's not substantive other than what you had done. So please, in your opening, explain what you did here.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, yeah, and to my colleagues for their latitude here. The substitute version, it doesn't change anything in terms of the intent or the mechanisms for how we are changing the revenue. The only thing that changed is just the levels of it, the thresholds. There was an adjustment on the thresholds from 20 million to 50 million so that we can better encompass and include more of our local big businesses, but nothing of the mechanisms have changed, and that's why I asked for a substitution rather than just amend on the floor.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so what I'm trying to do and what I'm asking my colleagues for is one of the big things that's come up in this dialogue is the just the sheer amount of economic output from the top 1% and how unequal it is to be giving the same broad brush tax policy across the board. I believe that there should be a more graduated, progressive step on how to do it. And so what this amendment does, it allows an opportunity for us to give more of our local businesses a much more significant and bigger tax break than we are currently offering in the budget now. And we offset and pay for as much of it as we can with a slight increase to the top 1% making greater than $50 million. So for the substance of what this bill changes, businesses that are making less than $1 million will have a 3% BPT, expanding the threshold from 500,000 to $1 million. And then any businesses that are making over $1 million and less than $50 million will be having a 4% BPT, whereas anybody making greater than $50 million in revenues would be assessed with a 6% BPT. And the idea is that this gives us a much more balanced taxing scheme that actually allows us to give more tax breaks and tax benefits to more businesses to the tune of 1,744 businesses get a very substantial tax cut. And it was only 33 businesses, 33 out of the 1,700 businesses that will be assessed at a higher tax break, at a higher tax level. And so I asked my colleagues for this because I think that this is a way that we can achieve that targeted taxation relief that we were talking about. This way allows us to take advantage of the additional revenues that are coming in from the military-industrial complex while still putting a very generous threshold so that we are not impacting our local businesses like our hotels and our car dealerships and our gas stations and whatever big enterprise here on Guam. We are putting a very generous threshold for the 4% so that, you know, we can really take advantage of this tale of two economies that we've talked about. In the pre-COVID times, our most prosperous hotel in the peak of our tourism history was drawing in $85 million in revenue. And to think that there are corporations of such size that dwarf it, make 3, 4, 5 times what our richest local businesses, most well-off local businesses are able to produce. So there really is just an incredible amount of top-heavy revenue. If you look at it, just these top 33 businesses account for $4.6 billion of our gross revenue here of the island, out of 9.3 million, out of 9.3 billion in total. So, you know, I don't have very much illusion that this amendment is going to pass, but I hope that we could start to open up the dialogue for how top-heavy the economic revenue on our island is, and maybe address that in such a way that everybody can win. And so with that, I ask my colleagues to support this amendment, and I look forward to any conversation about this, because it, you know, take a look at the charts. It's very, very interesting, and I think we're really missing an opportunity to better our island in the long term by not taking advantage of these military-industrial contracts in the short term. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my time.
Senator Parkinson. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment, the Parkinson amendment?
Point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Are there
Senator.
any estimates of the impact of this?
Yeah, would you yield to that, Senator Parkinson?
Yes, sir. I looked at some estimates of it. When I originally had it at 20 million, I originally set that threshold because that was the threshold where just on my preliminary accounting of it, it would be roughly revenue neutral, cost maybe about $2 million, so it would be actually revenue positive at the $20 million threshold. But at the $50 million threshold, it would cost significantly more. I pegged it right around 19 million, so it would still be budget. It would still unbalance the budget, but it would unbalance the budget in the favor of more revenue. I believe it would still cost 20 million less than the current budgeting scheme we have. That is, of course, subject to confirmation by OFB or any other accounting body here.
Senator Talai, does that satisfy your question?
Well, I was asking, can OFB verify that?
Sure. Steve, do you want to go on the record now, or you want to do some calculations?
First of all, Senator, yes, in looking at the proposed measure, the measure only refers to the rates being reduced. And it seems like each category being reduced is about 1.5 million. And if you're reducing the rate, you're actually reducing collection in revenues, because it's 1.5 million we're collecting less. So again, and without numbers, it's very hard to determine the actual impact of what the bill is going to have. But just taking the percentages as presented in the bill, it is a decrease in revenue collection, because we are reducing the rate of collection. Because when you're charging at 4.5%, and you reduce the rate to 3%, so that's a 1.5% reduction in collection, because you're not going to collect 1.5. So it's not increasing the revenues, you're actually taking away from what the government would have collected at 4.5 versus the new rate at 3%. If there's no offsetting, like if you're going to reduce one area and increase the other area, maybe there's an offsetting effect. There's no effect. But when you only have one side reducing the rate and no corresponding rate to increase it to cover the decrease, then it's difficult to assess what the impact is.
Sir, there is an offset. Businesses making more than 50 million would be assessed at a 6% BPT, so there would be an increase at the top end levels. It wouldn't completely offset the bottom end levels, but I do believe it's still potentially lower than the current projected 4.5 BPT.
And that's what's presented in the bill, but if you don't have numbers to correspond the increase and the decrease, it's very difficult to come up with the net impact of the bill, or of the amendment. That's all I'm saying.
Senator Talai, you recognize. Senator Talai, you recognize.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak on this amendment. I'll just say it straight out. I don't support increasing the taxes to 6% on any of the businesses right now, particularly because that was not at all discussed in a public hearing. We had public hearings and bills to reduce taxes, but never to increase taxes. So, but I very much support the intent of the author to tier our approach to taxes, to do what I tried to do in my first amendment and in my second and third amendments that were ruled out of order, this 3% up for those making up to $1 million. Because again, the practical impact of that is a reduction in taxes for those making less than $1 million, and it affects up to $2 million affects 1,071 businesses. And for a person or a business making the $1 million who are currently being taxed at 5% BPT, they're paying $50,000. At the 4.5% that's in the current budget bill, they would be taxed $45,000. In other words, they're only going to save $5,000. But bringing them down to 3%, they would save $20,000. $20,000 less than what they would have to pay even under this budget bill. And so I very much support that because these are the low to moderate income businesses. And this is, again, this is tax after exemptions. And as we saw on the chart from Revenue Tax, $6 billion or $9 billion in revenue, they have $3 billion in exemptions, these businesses. So this is all after those exemptions are taken out. So on that lower number, that's what they're going to be taxed. And so again, for the smaller businesses, this is our opportunity to reduce it for them in a very significant way, to give them, for example, the $1 million business, $20,000 more to spend than what we are giving them in the current budget bill. However, I think we can do that. I'm just not in favor right now of increasing the 6% part, even though I do agree that tiering is important. We should be targeted. We should see what we can do to fund the things we need to fund, not leave them out and ignore them as if we were deaf, but to show that we can hear the pleas of DOE, GMH, and these critical services that we've also made promises to taxpayers that we are going to take care of. And so I'm all for a win-win in reducing taxes for the small businesses making less than $1 million, and even those up to $2 million. But just at this time, without any further public hearing on this, I'm just going to hold back from supporting the 6% increase for business making more than $50 million, even though this may be closer targeted to those businesses, like a previous amendment tried to target, is those are the ones that were promised were going to bring income to the people of Guam, to bring enough money to mitigate the adverse impacts from increased military activity, increased personnel, and so that we could balance the good impacts with the adverse impacts. Those are supposed to be the good impacts. So again, I think if we can save a business right now by reducing it to 3% for those below $1 million or those below $2 million, they're going to have $20,000 more in their pocket to spend. And if we're not, So I want to thank the author. I appreciate his argument, I appreciate his tiering, and I appreciate his recognition of the savings for those small to middle-sized businesses and the difference, the huge differences if you really just pause to contemplate the numbers between a $2 million business and a $20 million business, and a $30 million, 40, 50, 500, up to $500 million.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. And on the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the Parkinson Amendment? On the Parkinson Amendment, Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Sidhu Swasti, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon again to the people of Guam. Thank you for watching this session. I commend the author And this is what we've been talking about. We've been very consistent with some of my colleagues over here about a targeted, meaningful implementation of the business privilege tax reduction. This is what the compromise is all about, my dear people of Guam. But I think it's become very clear here as we get deeper into this budget session that although this bill's called a big, beautiful compromise, all that's being compromised is critical public services. And there really is no desire or motive for some of my colleagues who support the BPT reduction for the richest of the rich corporations to move away from that. I mean, we've had amendments in here addressing the military contractors and the vast amount of sums that they make and an effort to really capture those revenue streams in a way that kind of asserts the value of our island and our people, because one thing I think this discussion and this budget bill has done is it's really blown the wheels off of this, I don't want to say ruse, but this narrative that we're doing this BPT to help the struggling businesses, and people are talking. They are talking about what a struggling business really is, and I think it's clear in just a lot of the data that we've been able to really put out in these 4 days in this session, that there are many, many hundreds and hundreds of businesses that are doing really good. And like I said, that is great. That's something to celebrate. Guam is already open for business, as we see the number of businesses that are doing well, making more than $1 million, and we see even more businesses that are making 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 million even. And so when we talk about compromise and we talk about the narrative behind this BPT increase, it's always been about these struggling businesses, and the people of Guam are surprised to find out that 95% of the businesses that are going to benefit from this BPT discount are not struggling. The average person on Guam who's trying to put groceries on the table, who's trying to put gas in the tank, who's trying to cover the rent, the mortgage, just the cost of living on Guam, they can't compute what it's like to deal in these vast sums of money, $50, $100, $200 million. And I think that it was almost disingenuous of my colleagues to push for this BPT discount and to market it as something that's going to benefit the small businesses, when it's very clear the vast number of big businesses, those are the ones that are really going to benefit. So I appreciate the targeted approach that really uses a reduced rate for businesses that are making less than $1 million. You know, this was something that I know the administration supported in the State of the Island address. I support it. I think it's reasonable. I think $1 million businesses are still a little bit on the small side. And then we maintain the 4% for businesses making anywhere from $1 million to $50 million. And my dear people of Guam, that is absolutely reasonable. That is absolutely a great compromise for this body. I think if you ask the average Joe or Josefa Cruz out there if they think that, businesses making more than $50 million should pay their fair share, should not receive a discount in the BPT, they are going to say absolutely. With great profits comes great responsibility. And so I commend my author for doing this is real work, to tier this and to be meaningful, and not just to kowtow to some of these lobbies and these interests, especially when we get up into the bigger businesses. If you look at the numbers, we're talking about 33 businesses that bring in over $50 million in revenues. And these are the businesses that are pulling the strings here in the legislature. These are the businesses, that were up in the balcony. And these are the businesses that have secured the votes in this chamber, that have probably made the commitments to fund some of the campaigns that we're going to see in 2026. And so let's be reasonable for the people of Guam. Let's prioritize critical public services over huge corporate tax cuts. And let's support this amendment from my good colleague from MTM. Si Dios Masi, Mr. Chair.
Just Masi, Senator Barnett. On the amendment, Senator Sean Gumatato, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I object to the amendment, and very similarly to what we saw earlier this morning with a very similar type of effort. Again, if there's an effort that wants to put this to a standalone bill and a public hearing outside of the Budget Act, again, I would encourage that. But I object to this amendment, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much.
Just Masi, Senator Gumatato. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the Parkinson amendment? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the efforts of the proffer of this amendment to try to figure out a way how to offset the increases. And you know, with the tiered approach, it does the top tier of earners pretty much offsets the lower tier. So we're talking about the top 33 businesses or 32 businesses, as far as their taxation goes, can pay for everybody else's reduction in taxes. And I think that's, you know, that's not a new concept. You know, we talk about sliding scale, right? As far as those that can afford it can pay a little bit more. So I think that's something that has been tried before, or it's pretty much something that's been tried and works in other places. And so I do appreciate the efforts, and I was doing the calculations, and it doesn't quite cover everything, but it's just short of about $500,000 to cover the reductions. And I think his concept of increasing the threshold of 50 million, I heard him speak on the radio today, and I think a lot of these $20 million businesses are in the tourist industry. And so, you know, I think that was also put into consideration in regards to where to draw this threshold at. So I think as far as equitable solutions, I think this is, it makes sense. But I do understand that the increase was not spoken of at the public hearing, which makes me think that perhaps we should table this section 2 altogether, because, you know, these new ideas actually, I think, is an opportunity to further evaluate policies and whether we can even effect more positive change within our business community. You know, it's hard to really come to really sound decisions when we're working on the fly. You know, this was actually put into the budget bill, which usually isn't, you know, which has an impact, a huge impact, on top of all the other impacts that we're seeing with congressional cuts, you know, which we haven't, you know, we're not too sure what the full effect is. And so to rush into a rollback, I think I feel it makes more sense to set this aside and table this whole idea of rollback within the budget bill. Perhaps we can somehow put a bookmark on the amount so that, you know, we can hold on to it, set it aside, versus trying to, however the body can think of a solution. But I think that this is, I guess there's a lot of discussion, I think, that needs to be had in regards to how to change the taxation altogether, right? Especially now, to me, what is going to make the sound policy decision to grow our economy, considering that we need to pivot? You know, we do need to recover. Our tourism industry has to recover, as well as other areas, but perhaps we can pivot to other industries and diversify our economy. And I feel that we're missing an opportunity by diverting it to one specific purpose. And so that's a thought for the body. You know, it is a win. It could be a win-win for all of us here, and not have to double down on rollbacks. So just some thoughts on this amendment to Masi.
Masi, Senator Perez. On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator Parkinson, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for the discussion on this bill. It's, I hear the comments of my colleagues that they're right. We have not really spoken about this in a public hearing setting. And maybe we should. Maybe we should. I am not under no illusions that this amendment is going to pass during this session. But I thought it was important to introduce and highlight this idea because, you know, I spoke very passionately about how inequitable the taxation system is. And so it would be remiss of me to complain about a problem but not do my part to also come with a solution. And so this is what I see as a potential solution and something I'd like to talk about in the public discourse. I'd like to talk with the community about the idea that there are corporations so huge on the island that they make money in amounts that would make your head spin just reading about it. And this was my effort to introduce the concept and the idea of having a more tiered, progressive taxation system with our BPT. Because even though they are all businesses, they are all not created equally. There is a significant difference and gulf between my tita that cuts my hair on the weekends down the street and these mega corporations that have revenues that would rival that of small countries. And something we also need to ask as a community. I know we all have an aversion to the idea of taxation. What rational actor doesn't? But we have to ask ourselves, how many zeros is one business allowed to rack up before we say, maybe we should tax them more? I started this discussion earlier at this amendment at 20 million, but I raised it to 50 million so that we can spare our local businesses, because you're right, there are hotels and stuff, there are establishments that have not recovered because of the slow tourism recovery, and I'm not looking to hit them up even harder. I've always said that this was always about making sure we capture the revenues from the military buildup. That's why I am comfortable raising it 1% above for businesses making more than $50 million. Can anybody look around this body and say with a straight face that they are truly concerned that the people with revenues in $50 million, they're the ones that they're worried about, that they're the ones that are struggling? No, they're not. $50 million is a very reasonable threshold to make sure that we don't impact our local economy while still capturing this military build-up money that will not last forever. That's something that we really need to think about. That military buildup will not last forever. It would be bananas of us to keep our taxes low now, and then as soon as the military buildup is over, start raising the taxes because we don't got enough revenue because the military buildup ended. No, we need to start banking that away now. We need to start to find ways to target the military-industrial complex and capture that money for the benefit of our local community. They aren't building bomb shelters and things of that nature for us, so we got to improve our community through taxation. Through taxation and through cooperation with each other in this body, and a targeted approach so that we can use the windfall of the military coming to Guam in a way that benefits the most amount of people for the most amount of good. So I don't think this amendment is going to make it through, but I think this is the start of an important conversation in our community. How many zeros on the bottom line should we allow to accumulate before we even consider talking about raising taxes on the incredibly wealthy? Isn't that strange that we go through an entire budget process, twisting our way into all these different solutions, and we never once considered that? Never once? Does that seem strange to you? That we never once considered taxing a business making $500 million?
Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So on the amendment, there has been an objection. All in favor of the Parkinson amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Senators, we are now on a Senator San Augustine amendment. You will find this title of this amendment is JSSA L21-26 P12. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, similar to my colleagues on the last amendment, I have an amendment to that amendment, a change, and we can short recess what is being passed out right now.
Yes, Senator, and thank you. This was more substantive than the other one, so I would not have given it latitude. We're on recess.
Thank you.
Legislature's back in session. Everybody should have the amended version of the JSSA amendment that I just put forward that he had proffered. So Senator San Augustine, you are recognized this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to proffer this amendment to appropriate monies for the rainy day fund. As you notice, the initial amendment was to suspend, to eliminate the suspension. But it is to find funding. Again, your oversight of the unobligated FY25 general fund balance is to be commended. I want to ensure we recognize this again, Mr. Chairman. This amendment I'm proffering will appropriate little change is to add the word up to 10 million to the rainy day fund using monies available in the unobligated FY25 general fund balance as stated in June 2025 Consolidated Revenue and Expenditure Report. This amendment further appropriates any FY25 fourth quarter unobligated revenues collected above adopted levels from Public Law 37-125 to be deposited into the rainy day fund. This will make the rainy day fund fulfill law that the average of the last 3 fiscal years be formulated. This includes FY23, 24, and 25, as we are discussing FY26. Mr. Chair, your oversight of the excess revenues will allow us to make this fund a whole with this appropriation. Together, we can ensure that in times of emergency, whether natural or man-made, we'll be able to ensure our people are well taken care of. And when Gita goes to the bond market, our credit rating will be maintained. We will get a good credit rating, and our credit rating won't drop. And I thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hope for the support of my colleagues on this amendment.
On the amendment, Senator Tadegui, you recognize.
Mr. Chair, can we have OFB give an explanation again what was reiterated yesterday by using FY25, 24, 23 as the 3 priors to give us a cap and what that cap again is. I mean, last night you said it's 90,400,000 as the cap, so I'd like to hear that again explaining to us. And by the way, colleagues from DOA, they already clearly stated that in the rainy day fund, after FY25 has been completed, it'll be a total of 77 million in the rainy day fund.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Again, utilizing FY23, 24, and 25 as the base to determine what the required cap will be is for FY23, the total amount is 809.9 million. In FY24, it's 909.2 million. And in FY25, we're using 994.8 million. If you sum all of that, you'll come up to 2.713 million. You take the average of those years, it comes out to 904.6 million. You take 10% of that, comes out to 90.4. That right now, utilizing those 3 years would be the cap required to fulfill the rainy day law.
Do you concur that it's 7? I mean, they brought. I mean, we can FOIA even DOA to make sure that they came in front of us and told us how much money is in that rainy day fund. They said 77 million after FY25. If we were to make this appropriation in there, then to cap it off, it would be 13,400,000 to cap it off to 90,400,000. However, I mean, in the budget bill, you had 18 million for the rainy day fund to be suspended. I'm not sure how that 18 million came about. It was what? Based,
18 million is based on the total appropriation available for FY26 to be appropriated.
Okay, so that's the 18.
Yes.
However, to meet the cap, so-called cap, which I don't think we should have a cap because we're bound to have issues coming up in the future that's going to need more than the 90 million that we're capped at. We should continue to do this every time. I mean, people, when they save money every year. It doesn't stop, If they can save money, they take a few out and put it away for a rainy day fund, and so should we. It's responsible financial governments if we do that. Now, it would mean up to 13, so I want to make an amendment to the amendment. Now, the author is stating that he is quoting up to, and in this amendment, but what I would like to do is up to 13,400,000. Now, 400,000, not 10, because that doesn't meet the cap. The cap is 90 $13,400,000. And if you subtract the 77, you come out to $13,400,000. Is that math correct, Steve?
Using the numbers you cited, Senator, yes.
Okay. So I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment, and that is to strike out 10 million and put 13,400,000. Now, I believe he wants to incorporate up to, but at least we're reaching that cap. And it's still lower from what the law says we should, fork out. So it's still lower than 18 million. So that's my amendment to the amendment.
On the amendment to the San Augustine Amendment, anyone wish to speak? Senator Teitig, can you restate your amendment to the amendment for other senators who are requesting a restatement?
So as I mentioned earlier, and Steve, finalized the number, that the cap is actually $90,404,000 in the cap of the rainy day fund. Now, currently, there's $77 million in the rainy day fund after FY25 has been completed, after. That means that in order to reach that cap of $90,400,000, it comes to $13,400,000, which is still lower than the 2% required earlier that was placed in the legislation, Bill 44 substituted, of 18 million. However, again, the cap says 90,400,000, and in order to reach that, it's actually 13,400,000 to reach that cap. In this amendment, it only gives 10 million. And the author of this amendment is anticipated to say, to incorporate up to. So if that's his prerogative, if it gets through or not, but I think that if we're going to do an up to, I'd rather not have an up to, I'd rather have it just say 13,400,000 shall be put into the rainy day fund. But at this point, the compromise would be at least up to $13,400,000 is my amendment to strike out 10 million. I hope that was...
Everybody understand the amendment to the amendment? On the amendment to the amendment.
Point of order, just Mr. Chair, if I may. On the amendment as proffered by Senator JSSA, it is already an amendment to the original amendment that was on the floor. Am I correct?
Yes, that's an amendment being proffered to the amendment.
So based on our standing rules, I think that we need to dispose of this amendment before we amend to do a second amendment. You can't do two amendments if we already have a motion on the floor. So I just want to get verification on that, because we should dispose of the amendment to the main amendment.
Yeah, the
A point of information, Mr. Chair, there was
And
not
just
an
noting,
amendment.
sir?
It was a discussion of maybe making an amendment, but he did not make that amendment yet.
Yeah, so the senator was speaking on the amendment as proffered by Senator San Augustine. Yes, he amended his original amendment, and so, right, so we were speaking, well.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can we take a minute recess?
Yeah, let me take a minute recess.
Point of inquiry.
Legislature's back in session. Point of inquiry by Senator Perez.
Yes, so can OFB confirm what is the net unobligated projected revenue, general fund revenue, from the June 2025 CRER?
Yeah.
This would help
that-
me inform,
yeah.
this would help to inform whether it's an up to or an actual sum. Yeah, but, yeah, I just want a confirmation about the unobligated amount for June 2025.
As of the June 30th, 2025 CER report, the net unobligated projected FY25 fund revenue is $30.9 million.
30.9 is what he read out.
And a point of information, Mr. Chair, are already, and to the good senator from Barrigada Heights, already there was an amendment that was passed earlier taking from the same source, if I'm not mistaken, of 16 million.
That's correct.
So, right? Is
That's
that
correct.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you take the, 30 million minus 16, the leftover, you still have enough to cover this.
Okay, so we are going to now proceed. We've answered all the questions. We are now proceeding on any comments on the Joe San Agustin amendment as amended through his introduction. Any comments? Any questions? Any comments?
Yeah, question, so it's an up to 10 million? Is that what he's saying?
The amendment should be in front of you, Senator. But we passed it out.
Yeah, but the amendment says the sum of 10 million, so he's amending it to up to?
That's correct. He has an amendment. Yeah, when he opened on his amendment, the main amendment, he made an amendment, and that amendment should be on your desk. And that
No.
is the up to
Yeah,
is
so
what
it
he
doesn't say
amended
up to in my desk right now. There's no up to.
in his opening. So it, one minute recess. Legislature's back in session. Senators, when the proffer of this amendment opened, his amendment was up to. That was his amendment. So his amendment is in order, and we are currently debating the Joe San Agustin amendment to his amendment. Anyone wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment proffered by Senator Snogsteen.
We're debating the up to amendment?
That's correct.
And then we will debate the actual
That's
amendment that
correct.
he's
We will
making?
dispose of the up to at this point, and then we will go back to the main motion.
All right, on the up to amendment.
You are recognized, Senator Talai.
Yes, I just don't see or recognize how we're going to accept an up to language when it comes to rainy day fund. It's not clear who's going to make the decision, who's going to decide how little we can put in there if it's up to. It gives no minimum. It could be $1 or up to $10 million if that's the amendment. And so I would object to the words up to being added to this. I think we either are going to fund it or we're not going to fund the rainy day. And so that's my comments on the up to language.
Senator Talai. On the amendment to the proffered amendment by Senator Joe Snogsteen. Senator, you've already spoken on the amendment?
No, I haven't. Because if I may, Mr. Chair, we still, like Senator, from Guåhan or Pago Bay, mentioned that we still have to accept the amendment to the amendment, which was the first amendment that was brought in was without the appropriations. Then the good senator, the author, brought in a second one, amendment to that amendment, which has not been disposed of, right? So we're not disposing that? I thought we have to dispose of that first.
No, we are disposing of the up to language at this point.
Yeah, but we haven't even, haven't accepted the change already.
No, nobody objected to his amendment when he proffered it in his opening, and then his amendment when his opening was up to.
There was no mention of any objections to the amended version. No, there was no motion. Ask clerk. Clerk is there.
Senators, I had the senator open on his amendment, or his original amendment. And while he was speaking on the opening, he included an amendment, like everybody
Chair,
else has
if I
done
may,
on the floor.
the original amendment did not include the appropriation. If you look at the Google Drive, his original amendment is just by itself. And if you could seek clerk's assistance, because I asked the same question. Can we take a short minute recess while you, because I asked the clerk and she explained that this was an amendment to his amendment.
We are in recess. The legislature is back in session, and okay, so we've sorted this out. Members, first of all, I'm going to ask for the author to withdraw on his original opening on the amendment because it was amended and it was supposed to be the prime motion being moved first. So I'm going to have you motion to withdraw your opening.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I ask that the body will allow me to withdraw my amendment.
On the motion to withdraw his amendment and go back to his main amendment that he was supposed to have proffered. Any objections? So ordered. Senators, we are now on Amendment JSSA L21-26P12. Senator Sinaughtean, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to my amendment, and I'll read the amendment, all right? The amendment is, as you all have a copy of it, appropriation to the 2% General Fund Reserve Deficit Reduction Rainy Day Fund. Notwithstanding any provisions of law, the sum of up to $10 million is hereby appropriated from the net projected unobligated fiscal year 2025 General Fund revenue balance. As identified in June 2025, Consolidated Revenue and Expenditure Report to General Fund Reserve Deficit Reduction Rainy Day Fund. All remaining unobligated fiscal year 2025 General Fund revenue balance from fourth quarter of 2025 collected above the revenue levels adopted pursuant to 37-125 are hereby appropriated to and shall be deposited into the General Fund Reserve Deficit Reduction Rainy Day Fund. Now I'll read my opening.
Please do, Senator. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Mr. Chairman, your oversight of the unobligated FY2025 General Fund balance is to be commended. I want to ensure we recognize this again, reminding my colleague. This amendment I'm proffering will appropriate up to $10 million to the Rainy Day Fund using monies available in the unobligated 2025 General Fund balance, as stated in June 2025 Consolidated Revenue and Expenditure Report. This amendment further appropriates any FY25 fourth quarter unobligated revenues collected above the adopted levels from Public Law 37-125 to be deposited into the Rainy Day Fund. This will make the Rainy Day Fund fulfill law that the average of the last fiscal years be formulated. And this includes, as what we were discussing in FY26, many interpretation. Mr. Chair, your oversight of the excess revenues will allow us to make fund whole with this appropriation. Together, we can ensure that in time of emergency, whether natural or man-made, we'll be able to ensure our people are well taken care of. And when GITA goes to the bond market, they can at least promote that we do have stability in our funding in the government, and we can maintain the highest credit rating status we can attain. I humbly ask for all your support. Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Sidus Masi, Senator Sinaughtean. Senator Tidegui, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, OFB, can you give us the numbers on the cap of the, just to make it, since everything was withdrawn earlier, we have to go back to what the cap is on the rainy day fund, how much is in the rainy day fund currently based on DOA's presumptions, and how much do we need more to fulfill that cap? Steve, for OFB.
Can you repeat your question, Senator? I'm sorry.
My question is, can you share with the body what the cap is for the rainy day fund based on what you said earlier about the $90,400,000, and then how much is in the rainy day fund currently after FY25 money has been deposited according to DOA, and what leaves that, what balance would that be then in order to fill the 90,400?
Utilizing FY23, 24, and 25 projected revenues. The total cap, if you took the average of all those appropriations for those 3 years, you took 10% of it, the total cap will come out to about $90.4 million.
And DOA, how much is in DOA? In the rainy day fund from DOA.
DOA's report to me was that what was in the fund, and again, since we started all this revenue discussion, and there were several numbers that were flying around since day one. So the initial number that came out basically was 44 million, actually 42 million, and that was coming out of the FY23 rainy day audit. I mean, FY23 audit, which showed 42 million as the fund balance in the rainy day fund. Subsequent meeting after that, a figure of 65 million was noted as the balance in the rainy day fund that was coming from Department of Administration. The most recent number that was provided to this body, I believe 2 days ago, that number now is 55 million. So being that is the most current number we have, and that is coming from the most reliable source that we can get, which is Department of Administration, we are using that number to go forward.
Okay, if I recall, DOA explained to us that the amount of money that it's in the rainy day fund after we've fulfilled the FY25 deposit was 77 million.
And Senator, what I'll do is I'll take the 55 million, which was the number that was cited, and I'll add in the 18 million that's in the public law for FY25. That amounts up to 73 million.
73 million.
Yes.
So if you take 90,400,000 minus that, 73 million. Steve? So that's about $17,400,000 in order to fulfill the cap, correct, Steve?
It would be approximately, to fulfill, well, if you're looking at the cap.
At 90,400,000.
Yeah, it's 73.5 million, yes, to round it off.
Rounded off is 17,400,000, correct?
73 million, 73.5 million would be the cap.
17.5? Okay, you're rounding it up, but. Okay, so Mr. Chair, what I would like to propose, considering, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine who we were talking about in the U.S. how certain areas in the U.S. that had disasters did not get the FEMA relief they needed. And it's anticipated that, you know, in some people's eyes that we're the redheaded child over here in the Pacific, that what makes us think that we're better, that we can get FEMA, even some of the other states, when they go into disasters, don't get it. Now, in FY24, we suspended the rainy day fund and appropriated $15 million instead of going into the rainy day fund for the Typhoon Marwa disaster. So you can see how important it is to ensure that we continue to put funding in the rainy day fund. And that's just one small example. Look what's going on in the US on disasters and if they're getting recovery. If they're not being cut. I was surprised, and I'm blessing, you know, it's a blessing that we have not got hit, knock on wood, everyone, with a typhoon again. As predicted, that we would be getting hit big time. We suspended the rainy day fund 2019. We suspended the rainy day fund in 2020. Let's not go back to bad habits. Now, right now, it says 1740, but if you, earlier, Steve, can you give us the number in the FY25? Someone asked what the CRER, a good senator, I think, from Barrigada Heights, asked what would the CRER is reporting in on FY25 for June?
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry before, while they're still reaching the information.
Say again?
I have a point of inquiry, just very simple.
Yes.
I heard that they're using to project what is needed for the rainy day fund, 23, 24, 25. I'm just trying to understand, how did they come up with that date when I think, if I'm correct, it's supposed to be prior year? Am I correct? And if it's supposed to be prior year, I don't know, the last time I checked, like, FY25 is not prior yet. We haven't completed it. So you shouldn't use 25, and I'm just wondering, what would the calculation be if it was 22, 23, 24? Just curious.
So, and that point of inquiry, because that's been something that OFB and I have been going over, I think it's going to be prudent at this point, and I asked OFB to do this before. Steve, can you please read the public law again? That section that was supposed to, is operative section that's supposed to be used? I think that's going to be way more informative than just going over the number, because once he reads the law, he'll tell you why he came up with his number.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before we go into that, while he's looking up the legislation, we had this conversation, I believe the other day, or gosh, I can't remember what day it is now. It's Thursday, right? So it was on Wednesday. Yesterday was Wednesday, maybe Tuesday. We had legal come up with their interpretation of what years that is considered prior, since it's already been appropriated. It was from legal. They said 25, 24, 23 is considered 3 prior years. Then the question was to Gita, which, as the oversight chair, I called Gita to find out how do they assess prior years, especially when they go to barn market or putting an analysis through, or their computation. And even Gita has said 25, 24, 23 would be considered prior years. Where we're at today, we're in the month of August, but it's still prior years. Then the discussion went to BBMR as well as DOA, and they said the same thing. 25, 24, and 23 was their assessment.
Thank you, Senator. So I will dispose of this request for inquiry. Thank you for your information. Steve, go ahead and proceed.
I'll just cite the law, Senator San Agustin, for you. This is subsection 4904, which is out of Chapter 22 of 5 GCA. This is entitled Deposits and Appropriation. All funds appropriate pursuant to subsection 22436, Chapter 22, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, shall be deposited into the rainy day fund. However, no deposits to the rainy day fund shall be made if the fund's asset exceeds 10% of the average growth operating requirement funded by the general fund over the prior 3 fiscal years. No expenditures from the rainy day fund shall be made that reduces the rainy day fund below that said 10% average of gross operating requirements funded by the general fund over the prior 3 fiscal years. Expenditures from the rainy day fund shall only be authorized by an appropriation or appropriations authorized by the legislature of Guam.
So as your point of inquiry, and once again, because OFB and I have gone over this, is that we are currently in fiscal year 2025. 3 prior years to our current fiscal year is 24, 23, and 22. How can we be in a prior year when we're still in the fiscal year? So that's our answer.
Point of information, Mr. Chair. It's very clear that we are dealing with a provision in an FY26 budget, not in an FY25 budget, FY26 budget demanding a deposit in FY26, not in FY25, and the prior years to FY26 are very clearly 25, 24, and 23. I think that's been made clear to us by legal, by the fiscal people who actually make these deposits, and I don't see why we're going to dispute what's the prior year for FY26. This is exactly what we are doing. We're not making any deposit today. It's prior to the deposit that's being made. That's what the statute involves. I don't know why we're going to depart from that.
Thank you for your point of information.
Point of
Senator-
information, Mr. Chair, as
Senator
well.
Kucinich.
Point of information.
Yes.
We
Proceed.
have legal representation in this body. And legal representation, less other than the prior speaker. Is there any attorneys in here? So we rely on our attorney for this body to give her assessment and analogy on it. Nobody else here, other than, Speaker Chalayi, is an attorney. It's not creating our own rules. It's not creating jungle rules. It's following the law. Now, again, Mr. Chair, it was discussed yesterday or 2 days ago about these numbers. And then this morning, Mr. Chair, when we asked Steve about the FY25-24, he came up with $90,400,000. And that's what we were going by since this morning. So I don't know what has changed all of a sudden, but I think this body needs to take legal advice, unless you have a degree.
Thank you, Senator. A point of inquiry was made, and we have answered Senator Joe Snogstein's point of inquiry. Senator Snogstein, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm only concerned is that when they use the word prior, por favor, fan, kung fan any prior fan?
Point of
Sa
order.
muna zo,
I think
kinihamsan
that
ni
Senator
Magaʹhågan.
Taitigui has the floor. She's
Yeah,
still.
do you have anything to add, Senator Taitigui? Because I am on his point of inquiry. That's why Steve answered his point of inquiry. Do you have anything else to add to your point of
Mr.
information?
Chair,
Yes.
I asked for a question from OFB. That's why my clock has stopped, because OFB is getting the numbers from CRER.
I understand, but I was recognizing Senator Snogstein
Right.
on his point of inquiry, and I'm going to close his point of inquiry.
Okay, fine.
I've allowed for the free flow of the floor. Are you done with your point of inquiry? Senator Snogstein.
I just wanted to make sure that we have, if anything, since we want to all claim that attorneys will know the definition, just look up the word prior. The definition of prior, everything is before, not today. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and so thank you for, and we have answered your point of inquiry. Senator Taitigui, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I'm waiting for OFB to get those numbers. Would you like me to repeat the question again?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. The question, Steve, I asked earlier is, what is the balance in the June CRER report for FY25?
The total balance for the CER report right now, I believe, is 51 million.
I'm sorry, the excess revenue in June of the CRER report.
Go to the CER report for June. Yeah.
No, that is not June. This is June 2025.
Yeah, that's what I want. Okay. The balance right now, Senator, as far as the June 30th FY25, as the net unobligated projected FY25 general fund revenue is $30.9 million.
Thank you, Steve. That's the number that I was waiting for, just so that I can share with my colleagues that earlier an amendment passed for the Simon Sanchez School using the same revenue. And that was for $16 million for Simon Sanchez. Now you subtract that funding, you're going to be coming up with $13 million left over in that fund. Now this is, of course, unaudited. So we know that we need, in order to meet the cap, it would have to be 17,400,000. And the reason why I'm saying 17,400 is because Steve just gave us a number of 73 million that's in the current with FY25 rainy day fund. So that means to reach that cap, it would have to be 17,400,000. Right now, this amendment is only for 10 million. So my amendment to the amendment is to make it at least to 13,400,000, being realistic, knowing that there's only $30 million. And from what I gather, I was hoping that the BBMR would share with us what the latest CRER report for is in July. But I heard that it probably will not go up. I just hope it doesn't go down. But they don't plan on seeing any more, but staying at 30 million throughout the end of the fiscal year. So that's my amendment, Mr. Chair.
On the Taigui amendment, anyone wish to speak?
As amended.
On the Taigui amendment to the JSSA amendment. Senator, Ranking Member Tina
Thank you,
Rosemary
Mr.
Barnes, you're
Chair.
recognized.
Just in all fairness to the inquiries that were asked earlier, I just want to confirm, as they looked at the 23, 24, 25, I think it's only fair that just for numbers' sake and trying to find the middle compromise here, can I get from OFB the 22, 23, and 24?
If you use the average of FY22, 23, and 24, the cap drops down to $80 million.
So it's a $10 million difference.
So between using FY23, 24, and 25 versus 22, 23, and 24, the variance is $10 million.
Thank you.
Point of information, Mr. Chair, or just a point of
Proceed,
inquiry,
yes.
actually, because if he's using the cap of 80, Mr. Chair, and the deposit into the rainy day fund right now, according to OFB, is 73 million. The math on that would, if you subtract between the two, how much is?
Between $80 million and 73, Senator, is $7 million.
On the Taigui amendment, anyone wish to speak on the Taigui amendment? Senator Chalaw, you recognize.
Just to clarify, the amendment is to change 10 million to 13,400,000?
That's the amendment, correct?
Yeah,
to the amendment.
I support this amendment. This is consistent with the numbers that we were given in our week-long deliberation of what should be deposited into the rainy day fund. So, again, what's going to be deposited in 2026. We are already depositing for 2025, and so we should be consistent. And this consistency was not always done. And I don't want to go down this slippery slope that previous legislatures did, where they were not funding the rainy day fund at all for many years. I'm very proud that we are part of the legislatures that actually funded the rainy day funds over the last several years. And that, according to Gita, has very significantly affected our bond ratings. And we're not done with bonds, whether you like it or not. We're going to need those. We have unmet needs that are not budgeted in this budget. We have refinancing that's currently being done. And I think we should give future generations that have to pay those bonds the best rating that we can get, and hopefully the best value. So it makes a difference. And so I very much support the math that she has done and to get to this amount, and that the only difference apparently, first of all, the fund has been suspended in the current budget. So I'm very glad there is an amendment again. I tried one earlier, but there's an amendment here to restore this fund. The amount that the governor suggested was 18 million. So how we got from 18 down to 10 or 13 even is perplexing. But again, it just seems to be a philosophy of we don't need to take care of our bond ratings, or we don't need to really take care of the emergencies that are going to come our way, because there's some extra money somewhere to use in emergencies. And I'm going to remind everybody, there was no money to use in the emergencies despite all the money that we received from ARP and other federal grants. In the emergency, they took $20 million from GDOE. I remember calling it unconscionable at the time. And I don't know why we're going to go backwards and we're going to underfund our emergency fund. And I don't know how a budget even got on the floor that completely takes out the emergency fund altogether. Like derelict duty of the legislature, unless we disagree, like some legislatures did, that we don't need a rainy day fund. But I haven't heard anyone in here say that we should disregard rainy day now, except I guess the committee did. But I'm very glad to be part of an effort to restore this rainy day fund. And I'm very happy that the author has proffered a more reasonable amount. I still think it's too low. Again, the governor's proposal was 18 million. That's their calculations. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi, Senator Tulai. On the Tadigui amendment to the amendment, anyone wish to speak? Senator Barnett, you may proceed.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to rise in support of the amendment, and just kind of scratching my head because, you know, when we started this budget process, much was made about the $5 million difference between the executive branch request and the compromise bill that's before us. But that was largely because critical items were not funded in this budget, to include Simon Sanchez, fully funding tax refunds, the construction of a new prison, and the rainy day fund. And so I think it's really interesting how we are so quickly reversing position and supporting things that just a few days ago, the main supporters of this bill were saying weren't necessary. And so I commend the author, and I also commend my good colleague from Tamuning for really writing this this issue with the rainy day fund, because we're giving a 0.5% discount with a business privilege tax in this fiscal year to the biggest earning corporations on Guam, and then next fiscal year, as was passed earlier, we're also going to reduce it to another 0.5%. And we heard very clearly from the representatives from the executive branch about the impending federal cuts to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And every day there's a new update about some agency or some program that's getting the rug pulled out from under them. And with the things that the Trump administration is doing stateside. And so I had said this in my open on the bill. The bill was suspending the rainy day fund, even though our rainy day, when we look at a reduction of $80 million in government revenues to give a BPT discount to the richest of the richest corporations, when we look at all of the cuts and freezes that we're already seeing and the potential that there will be many more in the next fiscal year, our rainy day could very well be a full-blown super typhoon. And so I was kind of struggling with that, why we were suspending collections for the rainy day fund, when I think it's very clear with the huge loss in revenues and the huge impact to critical services that we are going to see, that our people are going to have to suffer through. We need to put away money for a rainy day. And so I rise in support of this amendment, and I'm hoping that this is really signifying a willingness of some of my colleagues to address the fatal flaws that are contained in this budget bill. So I rise in support of the amendment, Mr. Chair. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi, Senator Barnett. On the Tadigui amendment to the JSA amendment, is there anybody that wishes to speak? Seeing none, Senator Tadigui, you can close on your amendment. You're amending the amendment, Senator Tadegui, so we're closing on your amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to those who spoke in favor of this amendment, and to those who are trying to decide whether to vote for this amendment as well and stay on the course. I ask you to consider one very important thing. When Typhoon Marawa hit this island, we needed $50 million, at least $50 million to assist. And that's including having funding coming from FEMA. We are in a predicament here because what's in the rainy day fund right now we would deplete it almost if another typhoon hit us. And I'm just talking about one natural disaster. I have been consistent since I've been in this legislature to fight for the rainy day fund. The previous oversight chair of appropriation knows that. The author of this amendment knows that. Every budget hearing, I ensure that there's money into the rainy day fund. To a point now, we only have $73 million in there. 73. And the cap, colleagues, is 90, which I will continue just for the sake of, to keep at ease in your mind that we are using FY25, 24, and 23. I will get another legal opinion, a higher legal opinion, to clarify that. So this amendment, I'm also only putting 13 million in this because being responsible, knowing that there's only $30 million in FY25 CRAR in June, I'm trying to stay within that means because it may not go up. And colleagues, remember that the special funds, $12 million is in the negative right now in special funds in the CRAR report. What's going to back that up if it goes even further down in the next 3 months? Or August, yep, in the next 3 months. Where's it going to come from? It's going to come from the excess revenue in FY25. So I'm hoping that just 13 million from what was asked for 18 million, be put in the rainy day fund. I'm not even sure there's going to be 10 million, but at least we started off this month knowing there's 30 million in there right now, after paying the shortfalls in special funds. Today, we're talking about ensuring our future, that we're able to handle anything that comes our way. Because today, we decided to be responsible and put that money away. Because today, we voted to put as much money as we could in this rainy day fund for the future. Let's be fiscally responsible. Let's keep our ratings up on Guam, because right now we're at BBB. So I ask my colleagues, please keep that in mind. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Tadegui, on the Tadegui amendment to the amendment, is there any objection? There is an objection. All in favor of the Tadegui amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. On the main amendment from Senator San anyone wish to speak on the main amendment from Senator San Senator Tulay, you recognize.
Mr. Chair. This amendment is significantly different than the one that's been on the drive, the one that strikes out the language to suspend the 2% rainy day fund, and now this language appropriates. It makes no corresponding changes to the rest of the bill and shows us how much or the impacts of it. However, my biggest concern is that, well, first of all, I'm very glad that there's been this change of heart from the beginning of the session and prior to the session where the use of FY25 excess revenues was prohibited, where the use of FY24 revenues, those bills have not had hearings because they were prohibited by the chair, and that now we are giving this great leeway to at least one senator and this liberty to, despite the rules we began with, put in these amendments to use the FY25 revenues. But if this is the only way we're going to increase the rainy day fund, then this is fine with me. I think that it's a silly rule to prohibit the use of FY25 or FY24 revenues while we've got hospitals, schools, public services still in crisis. And if you leave it in the pot, that's where you're going to come up with those things that you complained about. Why did the governor get to use it for health insurance? Where did it come from? It came from excess revenues sitting unappropriated. I just hope that the same consideration is made for upcoming amendments, regardless of who the sponsor is. The amendment says, these are my technical objections to this amendment. I agree that we should put $10 million into the fund from FY25 general fund balance. They're identifying the June 25 CRER, that's fine. But this is up to makes no sense to me at this point of our budget. Why are we saying up to? We either have the money and we put it in, or we are allowing somebody else to decide not to fund the rainy day fund again. Like, is that a trick that we're going to say we want to fund it, but allow them not to fund it at all? And then when the emergency comes, everybody's going to be asking, oh, I thought you funded it. And then I think I see a conflict between we're appropriating $10 million from 25 excess revenues identified in the June CRER, but the next sentence says, all remaining unobligated fiscal year 25 general fund revenue balances from the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2025 excess are hereby appropriated to and shall be deposited into general fund. It's a completely separate amendment. So first, we're not clear whether how much of $10 million are actually being mandated to be deposited, and then we say all remaining. This, I guess, I'm going to ask OFB to clarify what is the general fund revenue balance from the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2025. It sounds like a very limited amount to me. It's going to be the excess revenues in one quarter, fourth quarter, as opposed to what we're dealing with, excess revenues identified on a June 2025 CRER, but by the end of the year. I don't know. Why are we doing both? What does this even mean if we're going to say all remaining from the fourth quarter? It seems like we're allowing them to take $1 now and then wait until the end of fourth quarter and deposit for the fourth quarter alone. The excess revenues might be less than 10 million, right? So I don't know. I think it's intended to be all the excess revenues from all quarters, but it says from the fourth quarter collected. So I don't know. I think if that the amendment is just it should be corrected. It should be very clear how much we're going to put into this rainy day fund, how much we are not going to use from excess revenues, and whether we're mandating it or it's just an optional.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Speaker, could you assume the chair, please?
Senator Reyes, you're recognized.
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. I certainly rise in support of this amendment and wanted to come to the floor once again to address these discussions on a decision which was concurred by OFB and me as the chair to be very conservative on the wild, wild west, 23rd, 24th, Guam legislatures, that it was Christmas and it snowed on Guam because the wild appropriations in the current fiscal years of those days, holy cow. And that's why we need and we're relying on audited revenues. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, when I made this decision, because as OFB had put it, we are now 67% lower than collection rates showing in the CRER from the good old days of starting in 2022, 2023, and 2024. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons why the adjusted number in the CRER currently is $9 million to the Chamorro Land Trust that came off of the top of whatever excess revenues when excess revenues started coming forward. A good program, but that's how wild it was. It wasn't only wild, but we went in after we adopted the revenue and the governor signed the budget and scolded us that we still didn't do good enough. So 12 days before the last election in 2024, we got wild again. In fact, we were so wild in 2025 that there was $120 million in the last chapters of the miscellaneous provisions, and these people on the floor knew there was only $27 million of audited revenues from 2024, unaudited. But the wild, wild west just kept being wild, wild appropriation west. So we made a conscious decision. Hold the line. And now we're in the fiscal year, and check this out, Mr. Speaker. This is where I want to really take the word of the front office and all the representations that they came down here and made. They have not called an emergency session. You have been presented with some options and said, no, we think there's plenty of revenue still within this government to operate. Mr. Speaker, and now we are in August and September coming up. And guess what it's time to do as they present it to us? Use your transfer authority. Pay your bills. Make sure all those outstanding obligations are taken care of. So I say we have made the right decision. And now this is the most appropriate time to use those excess revenues for key provisions in this budget. $16 million that wasn't in the EBR, that's helping Simon Sanchez because of 2 years of it not being built or going to market, probably could have been built had it gone in the 90 days and proceeded through. It's election year. So bottom line is, this is the best use of this revenue because we're in the current fiscal year and we held the line. And we weren't the wild, wild west. And we didn't even appropriate money that's first in line on the excess revenues. That's why the revenues are adjusted, Mr. Speaker. The first $9 million comes off the top of that. Good program. That's the way we were appropriating before. Si Diyos masi, Mr. Speaker. I support the amendment.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the amendment, Senator Parkinson, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak a little bit about this body's history regarding excess revenues. There is a lot of revisionist history in terms of how things went down in the 37th Guam Legislature during the budget session. He cites 125 million, one of the previous speakers, that 125 million was put into the miscellaneous budget, even though there was only $30 million in the excess revenue funds. And that really just goes to show, really, and highlight for the people of Guam how many needs we truly have, how many problems we have to fix, that even with $30 million available for appropriation, we still had potentially $100 million worth of necessary and important projects that we didn't all get to fund. One of the things I've learned working in this body is that in many instances, when a member brings up a need for this appropriation, it's often a very worthy use of that money. But there are more worthy causes to go after than we have actual dollars to spend. So I will not accept this denigration of the work we did before, whether we use that money for power credits or to take care of farmers after Mawar, or to feed people, or to help our community, whatever projects we use that excess money for, they were all necessary. They were all things we collectively as a body agreed to. And so I will stand on the business of what we did on previous legislatures. They call it the Wild Wild West. I don't see it that way. I saw that as a time of opportunity for us to plug projects and holes and problems in our community that we thought would make a meaningful difference in the lives of our constituents. And if we are having revenue shortfalls, and if it's no longer the Wild Wild West, which I don't agree with that characterization, what we're having right now is a window of opportunity that is rapidly closing because of misappropriated priorities. We are doing everything we can to bend over backwards to give the top 1%, the millionaires and billionaires, the keys to the kingdom. Let them rifle through the government while the going is good, while we shortchange our people and our services. And so I'm going to bat for all the things we've done before. I stand in support of this measure, and I stand in support of previous measures we did, because they were needed. There are many, many needs in this island of Guam, more than this budget would tell you. If we had the revenues to do more, we would do more. And it seems that we are hell-bent on doing less with less. And so I look forward to continuing this conversation, and I'd like to thank my colleagues for their input and feedback on all this, because this is a very important conversation to have. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Senator, and just to show you that it wasn't revisionist, there was 9 votes on this floor to suspend that $120 million.
I think if you want to participate
No,
in the debate, Mr. Chair,
You're
you
not going
need
to
to
change
come
the
down
rules
to
now.
the
No,
floor.
that's been talked about before, and every chairman, to include the prior chairman, had the latitude to make a few comments at the end, and that's going to stay. We had 9 votes on this floor to remove the $120 million Wild Wild West appropriation. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the JSSA amendment? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Si Diyos masi, Mr. Chair, and drive safely to the people of Guam. As I know there's a lot of traffic out there this hour, and there's a whole lot of traffic in here too, as some of my colleagues are trafficking in conjecture. But yeah, I also just want to rise and object to this sentiment that it was the Wild Wild West in here. Especially, considering the people who are saying that are taking their rifle and putting hardworking government employees in their crosshairs. So what did we do with the excess revenues?
What is that point of personal privilege? Rifle was a draft document that was leaked, and I would appreciate it if you stopped acting as if it was a final document when it was not.
That was a proper point of personal privilege. Please
Actually,
continue,
that wasn't,
Senator Barnett.
Mr. Chair, and I think if you go read the rule
And
book,
again, it
you'll
was
find
not
out.
a final document.
You should
I
address
can
that
go
to
on
the
and on
people of
with you,
Guam.
Barnett. It was not a final document.
You can proceed, Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would say that whatever it was, it's caused a lot of anxiety with
That's
hardworking
because it was
government.
leaked.
It's caused a lot of anxiety with the government employees, and it's a
Point
little
of personal
heartless to...
privilege to the government of Guam employees that saw that draft document that was leaked
Point of
from
order,
our
Mr.
caucus.
Chair.
It
Point
was
of order.
not a final document.
I am
Point of
I
order,
am
Mr.
recognizing
Chair.
the senator, and I'll recognize you, but she has the right, when a member of this body is, as she stated, referencing a leaked document to exercise her
Mr.
point
Chair,
of-
I don't give a damn if it's
Pressure.
leaked. It's out there. The whole island's talking about it. I'm
That's
perfectly
fine,
within
but
my
No, it
rights
is
to
out
address
there.
it
It is
here
a
on the
leaked
floor in my
document.
remarks.
I'm being
Mr.
called all
Chair.
kinds of
Senator,
names
you are
in the
not gonna
community, and
silence
you
the
are
senator on her
perpetuating that.
privilege. You are
Take care
not.
of your documents, Nye.
You may proceed.
Excuse me,
Thank you.
Mr. Barnett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I was saying, we appropriated with excess revenues, extra cycles for the police department, extra cycles for the fire department, extra cycles for the customs and quarantine officers, extra cycles for the Department of Corrections. We took that money and we gave it back to the people of Guam in the form of power credits, which is a big difference from what we're seeing in here. In this budget bill, in this session, the priority has been to give an $80 million payday to businesses that the people of Guam don't think deserve it. And so I just wanted to provide that little bit of contrast, Mr. Chair. And since we are so upset about this rifle leak document, I don't think that we should be limited
Point of order.
about talking about it,
Point of order.
sir.
You're recognized on a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. The conversation should be on the amendment. Thank you, sir.
On the amendment, Senator Barnett.
I'm speaking on the amendment, Mr. Chair. So thank you. But yeah, I would just further say if you want to address the anxieties and the frustrations of government employees who have seen this document, who have seen it widely circulated, who fear for their jobs, then do that. But don't
Point
try
of order
and cut
again.
off anybody
This
who's
is
trying to
it
reference
was a draft document,
So do this,
and
Mr.
I already
Chair.
explained that it's not even included in this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I do believe you're exercising a lot of additional latitude, Senator, but the point of personal privilege is definitely accepted
I
by
don't
the
think
Senator.
that applies because what I had said was that colleagues are putting the government employees in the crosshairs of a rifle. I didn't talk about any leaked document, and I think I'm well within my rights to share
And I
that.
was
Is he gonna get to the
clarifying
point of an
what you are-
amendment, or is
what
he
you
gonna
are
continue
claiming.
this?
Senator, are you done?
Thank you.
And to correct your statement again, the supplemental budget was the one that recognized those cycles. Anyone
Well,
else
just
on the
point of
amendment?
information, Mr. Chair, the only reason
On
why
the
we had to,
amendment?
the only reason why we had to go into that supplemental budget bill exercise was because you barred the use of excess revenues.
To
And so we
stop
had
the
to go back
craziness
into
of the
that. That's it.
$120
Yes.
million.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we did $50 million of responsible budgeting. On the amendment, Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have reservations about this amendment because, partly, again, what was said earlier is the up to amount. It doesn't really specify, how close are we going to get to that cap. It could be $1, it could be 10 million. And I would like definitely, since there is funds that was highlighted by OFB, there is a balance left in the unobligated funds. It just would have made more sense to identify the fund, the amount, versus putting the up to language. The other reservation I have about this amendment is the second sentence, right, which states all remaining unobligated fiscal year 2025 general fund revenue balances for the fourth quarter fiscal year 25. So I do appreciate we are trying to rectify the problem where we are basically not putting money into the rainy day fund as the bill stands. But is this enough to address the ratings, the bond ratings? The other question that I have is there's other needs that the budget does not address that I think are really critical. One of them being the 3.3 million reduction in local match pertaining to Medicaid. And that 3.3 million would bring us $14.7 million. So having to tie everything up into one thing is a cause for concern for me, although we are trying to address one of the shortfalls, which is not putting money into the rainy day fund. Another big issue for me is the defunding of Guam EPA. $3 to $12 million, well, it was stated $12 million they've lost. And, that agency is critical for the protection of our environment. It's critical to everybody who calls Guam home. The other shortfall that this budget has, to me, is also tax refunds. During the Committee of the Whole, it was stated at least 12 million, 12 plus another maybe 18 million is needed to cover any needs that we would have to refund taxpayers on time. And we know the impact, and we don't want to go back to those days where the government not only has to pay the refund, but at an interest. So these are the concerns I have with this amendment. Although we are trying, I don't think it does the job. I would have much preferred it to state an amount rather than an up to. Masi.
Senator Perez. On the amendment, on the Snogsteen amendment, with no one else wishing to speak, you may close, Senator Snogsteen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For my colleagues. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for one of my colleagues thinking that I'm your favorite, but that's okay. I'm the former chair, you're the current chair. We can work it out. But you know what? At the end of the day, up to 10 million. I'm asking my colleagues, support the amendment, and let's just move on. Then we'll deal with the next amendment as we move along. We don't need to lollygag no more. I mean, it's a long day. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chairman. On the San Agustin amendment, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing none, amendment passes. The next amendment is proffered by Senator Chalahi. It is and reads as, colleagues, TMT L20 P7-12, Roman numeral I, Roman numeral 5. Senator Chalahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment is to address the deficient amount of tax refunds that we are setting aside according to the budget that came out of committee. So the Department of Administration and the Department of Revenue and Taxation both agreed that from what we know from Congress, the very minimum that we must set aside must include 10 million to cover corporate and 8 million to cover individuals. That's a minimum. They also talked about 12 million. So the point is, they're setting aside 25, the bill sets aside only 25 million for tax refunds when they made it very clear that our liability to taxpayers is going to be more like 46 million. And that if we do not set aside 46 million, this will delay the payment of refunds. Or they're going to raid an appropriation that is going to some other agency, and as we've said before, even the critical agencies, some of them are underfunded. And I don't think that's how we are supposed to act as a legislature, where we set the purse strings, where we just say, raid anywhere you want, take the money from anywhere you need. We should be very clear that's one of our prime responsibilities is to take care of tax refunds. Again, this is like going backwards in time. It used to be this. They would put low amounts for tax refunds because they wanted to spend it somewhere else. And that's why we got into years and years of delayed tax refund payments, where previous legislatures had to go borrow to pay off tax refunds. And I don't think we should be the 38th Guam Legislature that goes backwards after we have made progress to protect tax refund amounts so that they can be paid within 30 days or within a couple weeks. The faster, the better. I don't think the people of Guam are going to put up at all with any delay in the payment of tax refunds. Some of my colleagues in here suggested to Department of Revenue and Taxation that a 6 months wait would be okay. I don't see why that would be okay. That's a minimum. And that's how we get into the trouble. It's because we want to spend the money somewhere else as opposed to putting it where it belongs, into tax refunds. So that's my amendment. It's on the front of this page, is to change this amount, to move it from 25,359,760 to 46,211,874, based on the united testimony of Revenue and Taxation and Department of Administration, who actually pay these refunds and who have actually reviewed the big, beautiful bill and know the minimum impact that they've calculated will be an additional $18 million. Just
Masi, Senator, I'm going to take a 1-minute recess for OFB review on whether or not the revenues match. We're in recess. We are back from recess. Senator, Speaker Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if the author of the amendment can yield, two questions. Basically, the first question is how much of a increase is this total for the tax provision, tax refund provision? How much is this, and where are you getting the money?
Senator Talahi, do you yield?
She asked for a 1-minute recess.
We're in recess.